Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Sometimes All It Takes to See Is to Look. This will be Part 8, Chapter 8, entitled Stuff Happens. Shouta finds himself dreading this meeting. After having to announce to his students about Bakugo's transfer and having to deal with all of that, now he has to deal with a potentially harmful, though hopefully unintentional, mother. And still, later on, the Bakugos, who, if their son is anything to go by, probably are not the type of people Shouta generally aligns himself with. He is still quite worried about his class, though. He basically answered none of their questions. There's bound to be some confusion. Plus, Monoma being introduced to their class went interestingly. They seemed to take it as well as they could, given what little they know of the circumstances. And he still has class tomorrow, where, undoubtedly, he will be bombarded with whys the moment he walks in. Ugh. He doesn't want to betray Midoriya's trust and say anything incriminating, but he probably shouldn't ignore them again. He is an adult, after all. Even though he has no idea what to say, but he digresses. Nezu had set up this meeting with Midoriya's mother during his break period, which is why he found himself parked outside of the listed address at 1:30. The apartment building is depressingly average, sporting a weathered gray and unassuming exterior, with a lobby much the same. He climbs the stairs and, double-checking the apartment number, gives a single firm knock to the door. It only takes a moment for Midoriya-san to open the door. Shouta hadn't the pleasure of meeting her previously, though he can see there is no doubt this woman is his student's mother. They have the same big green eyes and round faces, hers lacking the freckles, however. Her hair is also green, though possibly a shade lighter. All in all, she is a short, pleasantly round, homely-looking woman. "Ah, you must be Aizawa-san. The email said you were coming to me today about Izuku. Is he okay? My baby didn't get hurt again, did he?" Shouta blinked slowly at the slew of questions and watery eyes staring up at him. Definitely Midoriya's mother. "Yes, it's a pleasure, Midoriya-san." He bows his head in greeting. "Your son is fine and uninjured. I came to talk about something else regarding him." The woman relaxes slightly, but still wrings her hands nervously. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, please come in. How rude of me." She opens the door wider and steps back, allowing Shouta to enter the apartment. "Would you like some tea?" "Yes, thank you." Shouta isn't generally one to play along with the niceties of home visits, but it will give him a moment to take a look around as Midoriya-san busies herself in the kitchen. He walks through the entryway, seeing doors to what he assumed to be the bedrooms. One shut and sporting an All Might nameplate with Izuku written on it. He rolls his eyes fondly at it. The other cracked open, just so he could see a simple bed and dresser. The living room was simple, cozy, with a few pictures on the walls, showing Midoriya and his mother. There was also one with Midoriya and Bakugo as kids, dressed in All Might onesies and grinning widely. Huh, so they were childhood friends, though it is strange for it to still be up even though they definitely aren't friends anymore. Overall, it was simple and neat, but not overly clean. It showed no signs that anything was amiss, though that didn't mean there wasn't. However, Shouta doubted this was an abuse situation, thankfully. He took a seat at the dining table adjacent to the living room a moment before Midoriya-san walked in with tea on a tray and offered him a cup. He nodded in thanks and took a cursory sip before setting it down on the table before him. Midoriya-san, for her part, was doing an excellent job at looking nervous, gripping her cup with twitching fingers, eyes focused on Shouta even as they brimmed with anxiety. Her and her son shared quite a few mannerisms. "So, Aizawa-san, what did you want to discuss?" She takes a hesitant sip of tea, while Shouta folds his arms in front of him and gathers his thoughts. He said he would only mention the necessary information, but as his legal guardian, Midoriya-san has the right to know what happened to her son. "Well, your son has recently come to me with some information regarding his past, and I determined that it was necessary for him to begin therapy." Midoriya-san furrowed her brow. "Therapy? Why?" "Due to the circumstances he told me about, it was clear that he needs professional assistance sorting through the lingering effects." Her brow only furrowed further. "What circumstances? Why aren't you just saying them?" Shouta sighed. If he wanted Midoriya-san on board with her son's healing, he might have to share some of what Midoriya told him. "Well," he begins, "your son didn't want to worry you." She frowned deeply at that. "I have a right to know what made you think my Izuku needs therapy. I'm his mother. I need to know that my baby's okay." Shouta sighed. "Very well. Straight to the point, then. Sorry, kid." Were you aware that your son had been bullied in middle school, and likely before that?" She's startled, almost dropping her cup, and ends up setting it down to bring a hand up over her mouth in surprise. "Bullied?" Shouta nodded gravely. "Yes, and it wasn't just limited to verbal or just teasing, which can cause a whole slew of mental issues on its own. But it was often physical as well." What? No, my Izuku came home a few times with bruises when he was younger, sure, but it was just because of some of the boys in his class being too rough with him while playing. They didn't know they had to be gentle with him. Huh? Plus, it didn't happen after he got out of primary school. I assume those boys had finally learned to control their quirks. But I only know Katsuki, of course. Oh, his mother and I are friends, but his quirk was pretty hard to master, and Izuku, being helpful as he is, helped him train it. What? And Izuku would have told me if he was being bullied. I'm his mother, and he trusts me. You must have wrong information. And Katsuki was in class with him in middle school. He wouldn't let anyone bully him. He's always been protective of my baby. Shouta couldn't listen to any more of this. He raised his hand, effectively silencing her rambling. Again, the similarities were crazy. Unfortunately, it seems that he would have to share more than he initially thought for her to understand and accept her son needing therapy. Midoriya-san, I'm sorry. He wasn't. But I have to disagree with you about all of that. The woman's lip quivered slightly. Your son was the one to tell me this himself, and I've been investigating Aldera Middle School, where I saw proof of the bullying. But why wouldn't Izuku tell me? I'm his mother. Yes, you are, but he told me that he didn't want to worry you or stress you out more. Midoriya-san opened her mouth to say more, but Shouta raised his hand again. You also mentioned Bakugo. She nodded vigorously. Yes, they've always been good friends. I'm sure Katsuki would have stood up for my Izuku. Shouta sighed. Unfortunately, Midoriya-san, Bakugo was actually your son's main bully. She blinked at him a few times, mouth opening and shutting as the information processed. But, what? No, that's not it at all. Again, your son told me, and I saw proof, not to mention Bakugo confessed as well. She just shook her head, confusion evident on her features. Shouta continued. I've had to punish Bakugo for what he'd done, though since it didn't happen at UA, he has one chance to improve. He has been transferred to a different class, though. Midoriya-san frowned thoughtfully. I don't see why Katsuki would do that. They've always been friends, though I have seen less of him in the last couple years. I am also home less for work. Shouta brought a hand up to his temple. There's a lot to unpack here. You mentioned that he helped Bakugo with his quirk. She nodded sagely. Yes, Izuku would sometimes come home with singed clothes, so I knew he was around Katsuki. He always loved quirks, and since he didn't get one, he took up studying them. Shouta had some doubt that Midoriya was helping Bakugo with his quirk. More likely Bakugo was using him for practice. Okay. First of all, I don't think that's what was happening. Midoriya never mentioned helping Bakugo, so it was likely that what you saw was the result of bullying. Secondly, your son and Bakugo are definitely not friends, and haven't been for a long time. Midoriya said as much. Thirdly, you mentioned that his classmates were too rough with him, because they didn't know how to be gentle. Why do you say that? Midoriya-san, for her part, was looking at Shouta with an appalled look on her face. He just hoped she was appalled over how her son was treated, and not at Shouta for countering what she thought happened with what actually did. There was a moment of tense silence before she spoke again. Well, he was quirkless. I'm sure he mentioned that to you. She sounded a little bitter. So he was weaker and more fragile than the other boys. They didn't know, being young, and ended up playing too rough, that's all. Shouta made an effort to unclench his jaw and take a deep breath in. He did not need to rant at this woman. It would likely make things worse. Midoriya-san. A quirk does not define if someone is weak or not. Your son would be perfectly capable if he still didn't have a quirk. He's lucky one came in, of course, but he could have made a great hero without one. It just might have taken some more work. She simply shook her head. He couldn't have been a hero without a quirk. It's much too dangerous. It's unfortunate since it was always his dream. I always tried to get him to think of a less dangerous career, but he was set on being a hero. Even now that he has a quirk, I'm always so worried about him. She shot a strange look at Shouta. With all the attacks since he started at UA, I've just been so worried. I wanted to pull him out after the USJ attack, but he really wanted to stay. Yet he keeps getting hurt. She began to tear up a little. My poor baby keeps getting hurt, even with his new quirk. He's still my baby, and I just want him safe. If UA can't protect him, he shouldn't stay. She sniffles, putting her face in her hands. Shouta can understand why Midoriya was so adamant about his mother not knowing. He was probably afraid she'd pull him out of UA or something irrational like that because it's proof that he can't take care of himself, or whatever the reasoning is. No wonder Midoriya has so little confidence. He's been told by everyone his entire life that he was weak. That's gotta be bad in the self-esteem department. Shouta can't stand when parents belittle their children like this, unintentional or not. Midoriya-san, it is not right to call your son weak for something like his quirk status. That can be harmful to his psyche, plus your son loves being at UA. He's shown his determination at getting to train to be a hero, and it comes in bounds. He's already afraid of being expelled for messing something up, so he doesn't need to be afraid of being pulled out because he's too weak to be a hero because he's not. Shouta looks pointedly at the woman, whose eyes are glinting with something strange amongst the tears. Aizawa-san, I understand that you are my Izuku's teacher, and probably know him in a different way than I do, but he is my son. You don't have any right to tell me what I should do for him. Of course. The look in her eyes is indignation. It's the same look Shouta sees when he tells a parent to do something for their child that they couldn't possibly need, because parents always know best, right? It makes things difficult. Shouta makes an effort to keep his voice level, and his face impassive, though he is moderately fuming internally. I understand that he is your son, but what he told me himself has led me to these conclusions. It is not a matter of you knowing your son, but of what he needs to heal and grow. He gets hurt because he has an incredible drive and passion for saving others and puts his own life on the line to do so. It'd be admirable if it weren't so reckless. That's part of the reason he needs therapy. Being bullied and belittled and being called weak just for his lack of a quirk has undoubtedly caused these self-sacrificial tendencies, as well as his distrust in others, specifically authority figures and low self-esteem. Midoriya is strong and courageous and kind and will make a wonderful hero one day, but he needs help getting there. This includes keeping him in school and setting him up with someone who can help. He needs to learn that his life is not a good price for others' safety. Again, Midoriya-san looks affronted by what he said, but seems to also be considering his words carefully. She doesn't say anything for a long moment, reaching down and taking a sip from her since forgotten and probably cold tea. She huffs out a slightly annoyed sound. You're not a parent, are you? She finally says. No. Uh-oh. Where is she going with this? Then you probably don't understand what it's like getting a call from your baby's school saying that he's gotten hurt again and wasn't protected like they promised last time. Shouta furrowed his eyebrows. No, I can't say I've ever been in that exact situation. Then you can't tell me what's best for my child. I can agree to therapy, but I still think he should be pulled out of UA. No matter how much he wants to be a hero, it's too dangerous. I can't let my poor baby get hurt anymore. This conversation was beginning to go off the rails a bit. Shouta doesn't want to make Midoriya-san upset by telling her to let her son stay at UA, but he also needs to convince her that he should stay. No, he doesn't really have a say in any of this, but this is Midoriya's future. He's not even here to discuss with his mother why he should stay. It's not fair to kids when parents try to decide who they should grow up to be. Yes, they're kids, and their parents should have some say over their lives because by definition they're minors and are dependent in that way, but that doesn't mean that their futures should be dictated for them. If Midoriya wants to be a hero and has the skill to do so, which he does, if a little rough around the edges, then he should have the opportunity to learn to be one, and Shouta knows that Midoriya wants nothing more than to be a hero. In fact, he's quite worried what would happen to him if he were forced to leave UA. Shouta doubts he would just give up on his dream, and if Midoriya-san bars him from going to any hero school at all, well, Shouta worries about his student's mental state if it comes to that. He needs to show Midoriya-san that her son needs and deserves to be a hero. The hard part will be convincing his mother of all this without making it worse. Even so, he takes a slow breath and replies. You are completely right, Midoriya-san, that I don't know what's best for your child. But I have been a teacher for a long time, and a hero for longer, so I can tell you what's best for students and her children. Midoriya-san interjects at that. You said my Izuku isn't hurt. Why can't UA just protect him? Shouta sighs. It's not a physical hurt, Midoriya-san. You agreed to therapy, but you are hesitant about keeping him at UA because it's dangerous, correct? She nods once, stiffly. Therapy will help him work through the mental hurt he still has left over from when he was bullied. Keeping him at UA will help him grow into his dream. Shouta leans forward and looks at the woman with What he hopes is a placating look, but he can't be too sure what his face is deciding to do at the moment, given the intensity of the situation. Midoriya will make a wonderful hero. He has all the skill and intelligence and the heart. He just needs the support he didn't get before UA. He leans back again, steeling his features some. Can you honestly tell me that he isn't happy where he's at? Yes, heroics is dangerous, it's in the job description. But you shouldn't take someone's dream away because there's a risk. There's risk to everything, but the payoffs are different. Your son has a passion for saving people, so let him. Let him grow and be who he wants to be. Midoriya-san sat quietly, unshed tears glistening somewhat angrily in her bright green eyes, thinking over the words carefully before letting out an exhausted sigh. I suppose I can let him stay, she sniffles. For now, I'm just so worried that my baby's going to get hurt one day and I'll never see him again. The tears start to flow now, silently, as she continues talking. You're right. This has been Izuku's one wish for forever. All he's ever wanted is to be a hero, and he is happy. He's been smiling more than he has since before I can remember. I never knew how quiet he had gotten until he stopped being quiet. She lets out a gentle sob. He was being bullied, and I didn't know. I didn't even ask if anything was wrong. Why would he hide it from me? I'm a horrible mother. She begins really crying now, and puts her face into her hands. Shouta isn't really sure what to do. He's never been great at comforting crying people. It's worse here, since they were just in an argument. One could say it's partially his fault, but he said what needed to be said, so he sits there somewhat awkwardly until Midoriya-san calms down enough to talk again. What can I do? How do I help my baby? Shouta sighs, a calm one this time, finally getting to the point. Just be supportive. He hasn't gotten a lot of support from anyone before going to UA, and is worried about disappointing people constantly. He's also worried that you will be stressed out if he tells you things, so just support him in his desire to be a hero. And remember, he isn't going to be a hero because he has a great quirk now. He could have been a quirkless hero if he put in the effort. He's going to be a hero because he will make a great one. Midoriya-san nods, almost imperceptibly, still crying silently. I can't believe I missed this, she practically whispers. And Katsuki. She trails off softly before something sets in her eyes. She brings her eyes up to look into Shota's again. Do you need anything else, Aizawa-san? He reaches into a pocket and pulls out a few folded up papers, nodding. Here's a list of therapists that I think would work well with your son. Talk with him, and choose what you think would be the best fit. Then you can email UA to set it up. All expenses will be covered, so no need to worry about that. She accepts the papers with barely trembling hands. You said you already spoke with Katsuki? He nods again. Yes, we discussed consequences and where we will be going from here. I have a meeting with his parents this afternoon as well. She pursed her lips briefly before standing and began to walk towards the door. Shouta followed suit. When they reached the door, Midoriya-san speaks quietly. She shakes her head, probably to herself. Thank you for caring about Izuku. He is happier at UA, so thank you. She bows her head, which Shouta returns to the obvious dismissal. Thank you for allowing him to stay. He's a good kid. She nods and opens the door. Shouta nods at her once before leaving. That could have gone worse, so he can't complain. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 8 of Sometimes All It Takes to See Is to Look. Chapter 9 will be up next. Personally, I really like this chapter a lot. I think that the author does a really nice job showcasing Inko in this certain perspective, and then also making Aizawa be a defender of why Izuku should stay at UA, and her kind of coming around to that towards the end. So let me know your thoughts and reactions to this chapter, and as always, thank you so much for listening.